In the hush of desert night, old winds carry stories of empire and bondage. We step quietly into a bygone world, a world where proud cities fell under gleaming swords and where the cries of the innocent filled the midnight air. In a distant past, beneath the calm stars, armies marched, and after the smoke cleared, countless souls found themselves in chains. Tonight we follow their silent footsteps. From the palaces of Baghdad to the dust of faraway fields, we listen to the hushed sorrow of those who were taken. Today we talk about slavery, its horrors echoing through time, its scars still fresh on our souls. But where did this evil thing begin? You may think of far-off plantations, of chains dragging in the hot sun. But I say look closer, look to the echo of that first whisper. It will take us back to the early caliphates, a time when mass enslavement began, a time when the very concept of owning another human being took root. Here, amidst the ruins of old Aleppo, in the shadow of the Hagia Sophia, under the scorching gaze of the desert sun, we begin our tale. The year is 637 A. The Rashidun Caliphate has just seized control of the Levant. Its armies, fueled by religious zeal, have marched across the region, leaving behind them the defeated armies of the Byzantine Empire. Among those who fell, thousands upon thousands of people, men, women, and children, victims of a terrible twist of fate. For these soldiers, it wasn't personal, not really. Their orders were clear: conquer and enslave. They followed their commanders, and what they did was justified by their faith. This isn't just a story from some dark corner of history. It's a first-hand account from an Islamic cleric named al-Baladhuri. He writes, quote, "When the Muslims conquered Syria, they separated families, killed the men, and drove the women and children into sexual slavery. And he's not alone. Another Muslim historian, Ali Hamd, tells much the same story. He says they would kill the men and take the women and children captive. But why? Why were these people treated so brutally? The answer lies in a concept called booty, a term that echoes through history, laden with meaning. When these armies conquered new lands, they took everything they could get their hands on: houses, livestock, valuables, and most horrifyingly, people. And don't think for a second that this happened only in the darkest depths of the desert. Even the great conquerors, like Omar and Uthman, had their hands stained with the blood of those taken in wars. They weren't saints, nor were they monsters. They were men of their times, men who believed they were doing God's work. Let's dive deeper into this dark abyss of history, shall we? Let's consider the case of Cyprus. According to a Byzantine account, during the battle for this island, the Muslims are said to have captured 200,000 people. 200,000 innocent men, women and children torn from their homes, their lives and their loved ones, vanishing into the clutches of the conquerors. Imagine, if you will, a bustling city filled with life, laughter, and hope. Then picture it under siege, bombarded, starved, desperate. And finally, witness it leveled to the ground, its inhabitants either dead or shackled, preparing for sale. That's the picture painted by history, a chilling reminder of the brutality of those times. Now let's turn our attention to the great cities of the Byzantine and Persian empires, names that echo in history books, symbols of grandeur and power. But now imagine them not as victors, but as victims. Cities like Damascus and Jerusalem became infamous not for their beauty or cultural richness, but for their heavy tribute. What were they paying, you ask? Human lives. These cities, along with many others, were forced to pay tribute in captives, sending forth thousands of their citizens to be enslaved. These captives weren't just numbers, each one a human soul, torn from their homes and families, thrown into a life of servitude. Men, women, and children alike were marched away, driven by the merciless heat and the even more merciless soldiers, their eyes devoid of pity, their hands calloused from years of wielding weapons. They became nothing more than merchandise, bought and sold in markets, their future as uncertain as the shifting sands of the desert. If you thought this horror unique to those ancient lands, think again. For even the great city of Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire, wasn't spared. Its citizens, known for their elegance and culture, were subjected to the same cruel whims of fate. They were captured, chained, and sold, the refined world turned upside down in an instant. And what were these captives like? Were they outcasts, criminals, or those who simply stood in the way of progress? No, they were ordinary people. Farmers tilling their lands, merchants trading their wares, artisans crafting their skills, scholars seeking knowledge, parents cherishing their children. They were people like you and me, living their everyday lives until fate intervened, turning their world into a nightmare. Take, for example, the African captives known as Zanj, sought after for their strength and hardiness. Imagine a village nestled in the heart of Africa, its people living in harmony with nature. Then picture the nightmare that descends when their homes are burnt, their fields trampled, and their loved ones dragged away. These Africans were no different. They, too, dreamed of a better life, a life of freedom, of family, and of peace. But their dreams were shattered by the harsh grip of reality as they were loaded onto ships destined for unknown fates. Amongst them were also Central Asians and Turks, who were valued for their skills in horsemanship and warfare. Picture a vast open plain with riders thundering across it, their bows drawn, their arrows swift and deadly. These horsemen were not marauders, but a people with a rich culture, with traditions passed down through generations, with songs of bravery and tales of adventure. But their way of life was disrupted. Their lands were invaded, their families scattered, and they were forced to march away, leaving behind the only home they'd ever known. Even the Europeans known as Sakaliba were taken, with many ending up in the royal palaces of the Arab world. Imagine a cold European winter, the snow falling silently, covering the land in white. Inside a cozy cottage, a family gathers around a hearth, sharing stories and laughter. But the warmth of their home couldn't protect them. For suddenly, soldiers burst through the door, scattering the family, tearing them from their haven. And what of the young boys taken from their families? Some were destined to become palace attendants, stripped of their childhood and forced into lives of luxury servitude. Others faced a fate even more horrific. They were taken to centers like Prague, where they were castrated and turned into eunuchs. This dark practice was widespread, a means to ensure obedience and control in the royal courts. But it was a small price to pay for power. As the years rolled on, these centers of horror grew more sophisticated, turning castration into a medical procedure, a cold, calculated act devoid of empathy. But remember, behind every statistic, every historical account, there's a human story. Imagine a young boy, perhaps around 10 years old, living a simple life in a European village. His days are filled with playing with friends, learning a trade, and helping his family. But his life changes drastically when soldiers arrive looking for captives. He's chosen, torn from his family without a moment's notice. He's marched alongside other captives to slave markets. Days turn into weeks. Hope withers away. Finally, he's sold, becoming property, his name and identity stripped from him. Now a slave, he faces a future of servitude, his childhood stolen, his potential truncated. Conquerors reveled in the spoils of their conquests, celebrating their victories with feasts and parades. Their armies swelled not just with soldiers, but with slaves, a testament to their supposed greatness. The gears of slavery were set in motion, oiled by the blood and misery of countless souls. And then there are the mothers, watching as their children are led away to be sold, knowing they might never see them again. All they can do is whisper a silent goodbye, hoping it reaches their child amidst the cacophony of the slave market. Mothers who gave birth under the shadow of oppression, who cradled their children while dreaming of freedom, who sang lullabies to their infants, unaware that those very lullabies might be the last song their child would hear from them. These whispers echo through time, resonating with the pain and despair of countless mothers. So the next time you hear the word slavery, remember the whispers, the silent screams of a mother, the stolen laughter of a child, the broken dreams of a people. Remember, it wasn't just a practice, it was a catastrophe. Let us wander now through a sunlit bazaar of long ago, where the air is thick with dust and bargaining. Here, beneath hanging tents and painted awnings, there are no children's voices laughing, only hushed sobs and soft cries. In the heat of the noonday sun, human lives are displayed as cargo. A trader sharpens his knife on wood. A slave master adjusts the chain around a trembling boy's ankle. You see eyes cast to the ground, dreams abandoned, the endless echo of price, haggling over something too precious to be bartered: freedom. They came from faraway lands across the sea, carried on ships and brought to the markets of chains. They were paraded before the bidders and sold like any other commodity. In the great cities of the medieval Middle East, the most valuable commodities were not silks or spices, but human beings. It was a grisly trade conducted openly and legally, and it played a vital role in the prosperity of the Islamic world. Every Friday in the great city of Baghdad, the slave bazaar came alive. The river Tigris would swell with the crowds heading there to buy and sell people. The stench of sweat, urine, and fear hung heavy in the air. It was here that men and women were bought and sold, families torn apart, destinies altered forever. This was the market of chains. When you enter the market, your senses are immediately overwhelmed. The air is thick with dust, the cries of hawkers, and the murmur of countless languages. Before you stretch rows upon rows of goods displayed on richly decorated carpets. There are chests overflowing with gold and silver coins, bales of expensive fabrics, intricate jewelry, and weapons of all shapes and sizes. And then there they are, the human cargo brought in from distant lands across the sea. The first thing you notice is their sadness, etched deep in their eyes, haunted by memories of home and loved ones left behind. Men, women, and children stand in groups, waiting to be inspected one by one. Their hands are tied behind their backs with rough ropes, their bodies emaciated from months on the road. As you make your way through the crowd, you can't help but feel a pang of sympathy for these souls whose lives have been turned upside down. The auctioneer, a wiry man with sharp features and keen eyes, steps forward, his voice booming across the marketplace. For sale, a fine specimen from the furthest reaches of Africa, he proclaims, gesturing towards a tall, muscular man with skin the color of burnished copper, strong and healthy, perfect for labor. Another auctioneer calls out, and here we have a group of women and children captured from a recent campaign. They come from the lands of the Caucasus, known for their beauty and grace. He beckons with a graceful gesture. One by one, the captives are led forward, their faces obscured by veils. Their bodies are inspected with clinical precision, their teeth, hair, and nails scrutinized for signs of good health and vitality. Those deemed strong and healthy are set aside for the next round of bidding. The weak and sickly are passed over, left standing dejectedly with the others who have been rejected. As the bidding commences, the atmosphere becomes charged with energy. Merchants, traders, and wealthy nobles vie for the best captives, their voices rising in a cacophony of numbers and offers. The auctioneers fan the flames of competition, their words dripping with honeyed persuasion. The crowd surges forward, eager to catch a closer glimpse. The captives shift nervously, their bodies trembling at the sound of their own approaching fates. Among them stands a young woman, no more than 20 summers old, her dark eyes shining with intelligence and spirit. Her name is Layla, though the memory of it has faded in the weeks since she was taken from her homeland. Now she is simply Lot 37, a commodity to be bartered and traded like any other. Her fingers, slender and graceful, are clenched tightly at her sides, nails digging into her palms. She tries to keep her chin lifted, her shoulders squared, but the weight of her circumstances threatens to crush her. As the bidding for Layla begins, the crowd parts like the Red Sea, making way for a procession of men advancing towards her. Each one is a potential suitor, each one a possible future. For Layla, the stakes are high. Her fate hangs in the balance, her future uncertain. The gavel falls. Lot 37 is sold, and with that, Layla's world changes once again. Nearby, a young boy, no older than 12, shivers despite the scorching heat. His name is Omar, though many have forgotten it, just as they have forgotten his story. Captured in a raid on his village, he has endured months of travel, hunger, and despair. Today, he stands before a group of potential buyers, his thin frame dwarfed by the rough-spun tunic he wears. His eyes, wide and wary, scan the crowd, searching for a friendly face, an outstretched hand of kindness. But all he sees are hard, unreadable expressions, and feels only pitying glances directed his way. Suddenly, a gruff voice cuts through the murmurs. A sturdy specimen, perfect for training as a soldier. The boy recoils, his body instinctively pulling back from the voice's owner. But it's too late. He is trapped in a system that sees him not as a human being, but as a commodity, an object to be bought and sold. The bidding begins, and with each exchange, Omar's hopes for a different outcome dwindle. As the auction draws to a close, Omar is sold. His new master, a burly man with a cruel smile, takes him by the arm and leads him away from the crowd. The boy's feet drag in the dust, his head hanging low, his spirit broken. He knows that his life as he once imagined it is gone, replaced by a future of servitude and hardship. In the heart of medieval Cairo, the Friday market bustles with activity. Stalls overflow with colorful fabrics, exotic spices, and gleaming jewels. Amidst the vibrant displays, a hushed murmur carries on the wind, drawing the attention of passers-by. It speaks of a gathering shrouded in mystery and intrigue, where fortunes are made and broken, and lives are irrevocably altered. Curiosity piqued, a young merchant named Hassan decides to investigate. He pushes through the throngs of shoppers, eager to uncover the source of the hushed whispers. As he turns a corner, he finds himself in a secluded courtyard hidden from the bustling marketplace. Here, in the relative quiet, Hassan overhears snippets of conversation that send shivers down his spine. Words like captives and slaves echo in his ears, hinting at a grim reality. Driven by a mixture of apprehension and morbid curiosity, Hassan steps further into the courtyard. There, hidden from plain view, is a sight both shocking and disturbing. Human beings, men, women, and children, stand bound and huddled together, awaiting their turn to be inspected. Each captive bears the marks of their ordeal, their bodies bearing witness to the hardships they have endured. Suddenly, a piercing cry pierces the air, echoing the anguish of those held captive. It seems to pierce the very core of Hassan's being, tugging at his heartstrings and stirring a deep sense of empathy. The realization dawns on him. This place is not just a marketplace. It is a place of unimaginable cruelty and despair. Just then, a weathered hand clasps his shoulder, startling him. He turns to find an older merchant, his eyes filled with understanding. "Welcome to the slave bazaar," the man says, his voice a gravelly whisper dot with that. The true nature of this place is revealed. Hassan understands now that he has stumbled upon a world where human lives are reduced to mere commodities, bought and sold without a shred of dignity. In that moment, Hassan finds himself torn between revulsion and fascination. He wants to turn away, to escape the haunting images that now fill his mind. Yet he remains rooted to the spot, compelled by an insatiable curiosity. Over the next few hours, Hassan witnesses a heart-wrenching spectacle unfold before his eyes. Captives are paraded like animals, their bodies examined, discussed, and bid upon. Families are torn apart, their bonds of love and kinship severed. Children are ripped from their mother's arms, their innocent cries echoing the agony of their loss. All the while, Hassan remains transfixed, caught in the web of this cruel and merciless trade. He watches as fortunes are made and lost with each hammer blow of the auctioneer. The air grows heavy with desperation and despair, the stench of sweat and fear mingling with the aromatic spices of the marketplace. Each captive has a story, a life, a name. Yet here they are reduced to numbers, to mere objects of trade. Hassan sees young girls, barely more than children themselves, set aside for the pleasure of the elite. He witnesses men and women, their bodies bearing the scars of their ordeal, sold into lives of servitude and toil. The cruelty and callousness on display leave him shaken, his soul recoiling in horror. Despite the scorching heat, a cold dread grips Hassan's heart. He understands now the full extent of the horrors hidden within these shadowed corners of the marketplace. With a final, sickening thud of the auctioneer's hammer, the sale is concluded. The captives disappear into the labyrinthine alleyways, their fates uncertain, their futures bleak. Hassan, shaken to his core, slowly turns to leave, the haunting echoes of their despair clinging to him like a shroud. Behind him, the market continues its lively trade, oblivious to the silent suffering that transpired within its walls. Hassan walks on, forever changed by what he has seen, carrying the weight of the unseen horrors that plague the very heart of civilization. Step gently behind gilded doors into a quiet inner world, where the scent of sandalwood drifts through twilight halls. Here, in a garden of marble fountains and shadowy alcoves, a young woman hums a lullaby to herself, but she does not cradle her own child. A eunuch applies oil to the violin strings. In the distance, a call to prayer echoes faintly off the courtyard walls. In the hush of the harem, golden lantern light reveals a life between luxury and chains. Silk drapes cocoon tragedy and hope in equal measure. In the grand palaces or the modest quarters, there existed a shared space where hearts whispered secrets. It was a place untouched by the sun, where shadows stretched long and silence held court. Here the air grew thick with untold tales and unseen dreams. Here women and eunuchs found their sanctuary, or perhaps their prison. It was in the hallowed halls of the harem that lives intertwined, hopes flickered, and spirits endured. Once inside these palaces, gender shaped a slave's fate. Men were often put to work, their bodies hewn into tools, their minds sharpened for military service. Women usually became jarg, domestic slaves, or concubines, their bodies a source of pleasure, their identities a footnote. For Islamic law permitted men to have relations with enslaved women without the bonds of formal marriage. And the children of such unions, the Mursaline, carried a mark of their origins, an indelible stain on their social standing. Concubines were prized for their youth and beauty, often little more than children themselves when taken into the intimate chambers of the elite. One story whispers of a concubine who bore a son, an al-Walid, a mother of a male heir. She gained a sliver of protection. No longer could she be sold, but she remained a captive. Her freedom was measured by the lifespan of her master. When he passed, she would be freed, along with her son, to carve out a precarious life on their own. Their future uncertain, a constant negotiation between survival and dignity. Paradoxically, it is said that within the confines of these very harems, some slave women wielded unexpected influence. Many Abbasid Caliphs, the rulers of the empire, were themselves sons of slave girls. Khayzuran, for instance, began life as a humble slave girl, yet through wit and circumstance, rose to become a powerful queen mother, shaping the course of her son's reign. Such tales are like stars in the darkness, offering glimpses of resilience, hinting at the extraordinary strength it took for a woman to navigate these treacherous waters and emerge with not just survival, but influence. They suggest that even in chains, a woman might find ways to nurture intelligence or forge alliances that could one day change her destiny. But these are rare stories. For most, life within the harem was a tale of quiet desperation. Kicking at the silken walls with bare feet, the sound echoing only in the silence of their despair. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, they yearned for a world they could no longer touch. Inside, the air grew heavy with unspoken words and the soft rustle of silk against silk. The chatter of the day died down, replaced by the murmur of prayers and the sigh of longing for a life outside these four walls. Within this hushed space, the night became a canvas for dreams, each girl weaving fantasies of a world where she was more than her master's property, where her choices weren't measured by the whims of a capricious market, where her voice wasn't silenced, but celebrated. These nights were filled with whispers of hope, of rebellion, of love, of loss. The younger ones, too young to understand the permanence of their situation, might dream of distant families, of games played in the sunlit streets. The older ones, their eyes reflecting the flickering lamplight, dreamed of a different life, of being someone, somewhere else. But dawn always arrived, bringing with it the harsh reminder of their reality. The vibrant colors of the dreams faded, leaving behind the monochrome world of servitude. The nightingale's song was drowned out by the rooster's call, and the whispers of hope were silenced by the clang of the morning bell. They awoke to the ritual of preparation, the delicate dance of applying kohl to line the eyes, of braiding hair into intricate patterns, of adorning themselves with henna, each movement precise, each gesture controlled. For even in this space, there was a hierarchy, and their value was often measured by their ability to adorn and please. The heart of the harem, the gyros, was a microcosm of society itself, a place where power, privilege, and prejudice intertwined in a delicate balance. At its center resided the women and eunuchs, their lives inexorably linked by the chains of circumstance. Around them revolved the men, the shakers and movers of society, each visit a reminder of the world the captives could no longer access. Each departing footstep echoed the finality of their situation, driving home the fact that for many there would be no return. Within the quiet walls of the gyros, a girl might be trained in music, poetry, or etiquette, her mind becoming a vessel of refined culture, her talents honed to perfection. But such learning was a double-edged sword. It served to remind her of the life denied, of the intellectual freedom she could only dream of. For education, like every facet of their existence, was controlled, directed to serve the whims of the masters, rather than quench the thirst for knowledge. Eunuch guards, men who had been castrated, kept watch, their presence a stark reminder of the vulnerability of the women within. For eunuchs, too, were captives of circumstance, their bodies violated in the name of service, their voices silenced, their roles narrowly defined. They, too, were prisoners of the gyros, bound by duty and loyalty to the men who had acquired them. Life within the gyros revolved around routines as predictable as the sunrise. The rhythm of the day dictated by the whims of the elite. Mornings began with the rising sun, afternoons with the return of the men from their pursuits, evenings with the cool embrace of twilight. Meals were taken in silence, the taste of food a distraction from the hollowness of the heart. A girl's worth was often measured by her beauty and obedience. Disobedience meant a reprimand, a slap, a forced march barefoot across the palace grounds, the searing pain a physical manifestation of her error. Aging brought its own punishments, for youth was their most valuable currency. Wrinkles and gray hairs were erased with dyes and cosmetics, but the process was as painful as it was humiliating. If a girl failed to meet the standards, if her charms dulled or her spirit faltered, her fate was sealed. She would be put up for sale, her body traded like a commodity, her spirit commodified. The new owner would decide her worth, her value fluctuating with the whims of the market. Yet even in this desolate landscape, life persisted. Within the shadowed corners of the harem, the walls bore silent witness to acts of kindness, stolen moments of solace. A kind word murmured in the dead of night, a helping hand extended in the face of adversity, a shared smile that spoke volumes where words couldn't. There were stories that emerged, stories of courage, of solidarity, of women and eunuchs banding together, finding strength in numbers. They comforted the grieving, the anxious, the broken, drawing upon a shared well of empathy and understanding. Within the sanctity of the bathroom, a girl might find momentary reprieve. The trickle of water from the fountain mingling with her tears, the scent of flowers momentarily masking the stale odor of confinement. Here, amidst the tiles and stone, she could shed the mask of composure, allowing the torrent of emotion to flow. Sometimes the walls themselves seemed to listen, absorbing their sorrows, sharing their burdens. As the years turned into decades, the memories turned into scars. The whispers in the harem grew softer, the laughter more subdued. The weight of captivity settled in like a shroud, stifling dreams and dimming spirits. Yet even in the twilight years, there was resilience. For within the chambers of the heart, the human spirit refused to be entirely vanquished. Love found its way, loyalty stood steadfast, and hope, like a stubborn ember, refused to be extinguished. The old women, their faces etched with the passage of time, their eyes repositories of countless stories, became the anchors of the community. They wove tales of a different life, of simpler times, of dreams that once soared high above the walls of the harem. Their voices, though weathered by time, carried a melody that transcended the boundaries of captivity. There are stories of rebellion, too, of women who dared to defy the confines of their gilded cages. They resisted in small ways, by refusing to smile on command, by holding their gaze a moment longer than was expected. Their defiance was a silent language, understood only by those who shared their plight. The walls of the harem heard the click of keys, the ominous step of a returning master, the muffled sobs of a girl bidding farewell to her fleeting freedom. Within its hushed spaces, it bore silent witness to the resilience of the human spirit, to the quiet acts of rebellion, to the embers of hope that refused to be extinguished. In the tapestry of history, the lives of the women and eunuchs within the harem remain a muted thread, their stories often overshadowed by the grandeur of empires and the ambitions of men. Yet their experiences, woven with threads of sorrow, resilience, and defiance, offer a profound commentary on the complexities of human existence. They serve as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can endure, adapt, and resist, proving that even within the confines of a gilded cage, freedom of the mind remains a potent force. This is an account of the forgotten, a tribute to the enduring strength of women and eunuchs whose stories deserve to be told. For their experiences, etched in the annals of history, remind us of the universality of human emotions, the timeless struggle for agency, and the quiet heroism that thrives even in the face of overwhelming odds. The last light of day flickers over bent shoulders and damp brows. A man drags a heavy cart of salt, and a woman pours grain at the millstone. There is no song but one of silent endurance, each gritted breath a prayer. Listen to the soft panting of exhausted workers, the distant bleat of tired sheep. In this twilight hush, the forgotten slaves of the Caliphate close their eyes for an instant's rest, even as chained chains clink quietly under the night sky. They called it hell on earth, a landscape so harsh it felt like the gates of the underworld had swung open. Fields of fire where men turned into molten wax. Here, life itself seemed to shrivel up under the sun's relentless gaze. And then there were the fields of tears. You might think we're talking about some far-off dystopian future, or maybe a hellish penal colony. But no, we're talking about ancient Iraq. Specifically, we retaking a deep dive into the lives of slaves under the scorching sun of Iraq as southern salt marshes. Now, when most people picture slavery, they probably imagine folks working in a palace, serving fancy drinks, and maybe getting paid lip service by the occasional bored aristocrat. Well, Those fancy palace scenes are actually not that far off the mark. If you happen to be an enslaved person in ancient Mesopotamia, working in a palace might have been your lot in life. But that wasn't the case for everyone. In the sweltering heat of Iraq's southern salt marshes, there was another kind of slavery going on. It was brutal, back-breaking labor under a merciless sun. The lucky ones, if you could call it that, got to work indoors processing salt. But many more were out in the blazing sun clearing salt from the soil, preparing the land for sugarcane fields. They called these workers the Zanj, which literally means black in Arabic. These were mostly East African slaves brought in across the Indian Ocean trade routes. Imagine yourself in their shoes. Your skin is burning, your throat is hoarse from thirst, and every muscle screams with fatigue. You've been bending under the weight of your master's demands since before sunrise, and now the sun beats down on you like a blacksmith's hammer on red-hot iron. The air itself seems to thicken, making each breath feel like pulling in molten glass. Even the shadows offer no respite, just mocking silhouettes of your torment. To top it all off, you hear the taunts of your overseer, urging you on, goading you to move faster, even as your body begs for rest. According to historical records, the Zanj endured unimaginable hardship in these inhospitable lands. Their living conditions were miserable, and their diet lacked proper nutrition. As historian Robert M.C.C. Adams put it, their well-being was often neglected, and their oppression was gruesome. If you don't recognize that name, let me refresh your memory. He wrote Heartland of a Culture, which was the first part of his multi-volume monumental work, The Origin of the Biblical Story, published between 1987 and 2006. And to think I almost forgot about that professor. He described how the Zanzibar workers cleared the salt-encrusted soil by hand, a near impossible task in such a hostile environment. This went on for weeks until the soil was prepared for planting. Once sugarcane started growing, the Zanj were tasked with weeding the fields. It was a losing battle because weeds thrived in the salty soil just as much as the crops did. Imagine the scene, a vast field of tall grasses swaying in the wind, their green blades whispering secrets to the clouds. Hidden among them are tiny buds of sugarcane, each one a potential sweetness for the future. But guarding these precious plants are the Zanj, their bodies weary, their eyes sharp. With crude tools in hand, they move through the rows, searching for any unwanted intruder that dares to grow too close. For every weed they find, there's a silent war fought, a tug of humanity versus nature's stubborn tenacity. Yet despite their aching limbs and stinging sweat, they press on. And why wouldn't they? Because a life without work was a life without purpose, at least in the eyes of their masters. The Zanj were forbidden from leaving the estate unless given explicit permission. If they didn't follow these rules, they faced severe punishment. Masters wielded absolute power over their slaves, the right to punish and even kill them whenever they wanted. One slip, one hesitant step, one disobedient look, and the lash might come down on bare skin. The overseer might demand extra work or worse, decide to test the limits of a slave's endurance. It gets even more disturbing when you read what happened next. According to the same historical account from Robert M.C.C. Adams, the overseer would sometimes make the slaves dig their own graves as punishment. Can you imagine the horror of that, knowing your final moments are drawing near, having to dig the very hole that will swallow you? It's a fate worse than death, really. At least death comes swiftly. This is a torture that lingers in your mind long after the ordeal. But hold on a minute. Let's rewind a bit here. Who exactly was this guy describing? Actually, it's pretty fascinating. This account comes from none other than the man himself, al-Balawi, who penned this in his book, The Slave Girl and the Concubine in Muslim Society. Now get this. Al-Balawi was a former slave who eventually rose to become the caliph's vizier, a position similar to prime minister. He held immense power until, get this, he himself was enslaved and shipped to Syria. He managed to escape and later became an advisor to a different caliph, Harun al-Rashid, the guy from the famous Arabian Nights tales. So this story comes straight from someone who lived it, lending a first-hand perspective that's both chilling and enlightening. But wait, there's more. Al-Balawi's tale doesn't end there. After gaining his freedom, he had the chance to exact his revenge on his former enslavers. When the Caliphate army rebelled against the Abbasid Caliphate and seized power, Al-Balawi urged them to mete out harsh punishments on the slave owners. Guess the revolution wasn't so sweet after all. And as the new leader of the military, he made sure those punishments happened. He ordered that every master be lashed 500 times as punishment, mirroring the lashes they inflicted on their helpless slaves. Talk about a powerful message of retribution. It's a reminder that the desire for justice can be a potent force, driving individuals to not just survive, but to reshape the world they live in. So while it's easy to view history through the rose-colored glasses of hindsight, the stories of people like Al-Balawi serve as a stark reminder of the darkness that lurks in our collective past. These tales ensure that the horrors of slavery remain etched in our memories, urging us to confront the demons of our history head-on. Only by acknowledging and understanding these dark chapters can we truly pave the way for a brighter, more equitable future. While we've heard a lot about the brutal punishments doled out by slave masters, I want to shift the focus to something equally important: the resistance, the silent battles of the enslaved. It's not easy to imagine how anyone could endure such terrible treatment without lashing out. But the truth is, fear kept most from rising up. The threat of a whip or a swift kick was enough to make even the most tormented soul bite back a scream, swallow a curse, and bend back to their horrible tasks. Every twitch of a muscle, every grimace was potentially a trigger for the overseers. And who could blame them? Living in a constant state of terror is exhausting. One false move and you might face the wrath of the master. But pain and exhaustion have a way of simmering under the surface, waiting to boil over. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, a hush fell over the land. It was a moment of respite, a pause in the symphony of suffering. During these fleeting hours of twilight, the overseers' gazes grew distant, their attention drifting away from the weary figures toiling in the fields. In that brief window, the enslaved found solace. When the overseer looked away, enslaved hands would reach out, not for a whip, but for simple joys. They carved prayer beads from scraps of wood, whispering prayers into the gathering darkness. Each bead was a testament to their faith, their silent rebellion against a system that sought to crush their spirits. While the sun was high in the sky, their bodies moved like puppets, their gazes fixed on the ground. But in the quiet moments of dusk, their eyes would lift to the heavens. It was during these times that their resilience shone brightest. Their strength lay not in their muscles, but in their indomitable spirit, a spirit that refused to be broken by the chains that bound them. This was their way of coping, their form of protest, their silent scream into the vastness of the night, a plea for justice, a hope for a better tomorrow. In the grand narrative of slavery, their stories often get lost. Enslaved people are frequently portrayed as passive victims, enduring their fate without a whimper or a word of dissent. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Their resistance came in various forms. Subtle acts of defiance that challenged the very core of their oppressor's authority. It might have been a whispered conversation in a forbidden language, a stolen glance at the setting sun, or a shared smile that spoke volumes in the face of despair. Each of these moments was a small victory, a silent roar against the deafening silence that surrounded them. Their resilience was the heartbeat that refused to be silenced under the weight of chains. We see this quiet rebellion echoed in the heart of the great Egyptian queen, Cleopatra. As her story unfolds, we'll witness how she too defied the shackles of her circumstances. Just like the enslaved toiling in the Iraqi fields, Cleopatra's existence was marked by limitations and threats. She was trapped in a gilded cage, constantly wary of the next move by her enemies. Yet amidst this danger, she found ways to assert her agency. Her every decision, whether it was choosing her own tutors, studying multiple languages, or cultivating an interest in science and medicine, was a step towards empowerment. These weren't just hobbies for her. They were tools. They equipped her to navigate the treacherous waters of the Egyptian court and project Egypt's power on the world stage. For instance, her command of multiple languages wasn't just impressive. It gave her the ability to connect with diverse groups of people, forge alliances, and project an image of Egypt as a center of culture and learning. Similarly, her knowledge of science and medicine, especially her interest in healing, can be seen as a form of resistance against the oppressive forces that sought to keep her weak and dependent. By understanding these subjects, she gained control over her own body and well-being, a small but significant act of defiance in a world where women's autonomy was often disregarded. Cleopatra's story serves as a potent reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit yearns for freedom and self-determination. Her journey is a beacon, illustrating how one can rise above the limitations imposed by society and circumstance. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. Listen now to the faint rustle of palms in the marsh at midnight. Here, after days of toil, hushed voices break silence. A leader among slaves holds up a grimy hand. In it, a blade glints in moonlight. "This night, we claim our dignity," he murmurs. Around him, weary hands tighten grips on makeshift spears. For years they bent backs without complaint, but now, hope and fury have taken hold. We become ghosts amid reeds and river, witnessing the spark that briefly set an empire ablaze. Centuries of suffering sometimes ignited rebellion. The most famous was the Zanj rebellion led by Ali ibn Muhammad in southern Iraq between 869 and 883 CE. This revolt drew tens of thousands of enslaved laborers into arms. For years they defied the Caliphate, building a state in the marshes. The uprising led to the deaths of tens of thousands, and it terrified the Abbasid Caliphate so much that it spread rumors about the revolt being demonic. But one man stood out amongst the rest. Ali ibn Muhammad, whose name means Ali, son of Muhammad, became known simply as the leader. And his confrontation with one slave master, a man called al-Hili, displayed both the depths of cruelty under the Abbasid rule and how resistance fighters sought justice and retribution when they had none in the courts. The story goes like this. It's the 9th century, and enslaved people are being sold in the marketplace. A young slave approaches. His name is Ali ibn Muhammad. His new master, al-Hili, tries to beat him down, break him, and bend him to his will. He slaps the young slave across the face, just as another slave steps forward, prostrating himself before al-Hili. As the other slave bows down, al-Hili sees his opportunity. He takes the whip and lashes out at Ali ibn Muhammad, striking him again and again. With each stroke, Ali ibn Muhammad's pain intensifies. Blood trickles down his back, mixing with sweat and dirt. But something inside him snaps. In that moment, he vows revenge. Years pass, and Ali ibn Muhammad grows, not only in age, but in stature and resolve. He learns to read and write, educating himself under the cloak of night. Meanwhile, he endures the abuse of slavery, bearing it silently until he cannot bear it any longer. He plans his move carefully. One day when al-Hili enters the marketplace, Ali ibn Muhammad confronts him, calling out his cruelty to all assembled. That day, the tables turn. What happened next? In the sweltering heat of the marketplace, Ali ibn Muhammad, no longer the cowering slave, faces off against al-Hili, who seems almost conical in his oversized robes. It's an odd spectacle, a contest of wills between oppressor and rebel. Ali ibn Muhammad challenges al-Halili to strike him, daring him to repeat the humiliation of the past. All eyes are on Halili. The crowd leans forward, eager to see how he responds. Some encourage him to punish the insolent slave, while others whisper amongst themselves, sensing the shift in power. In that charged atmosphere, Ali ibn Muhammad declares, "I wanted to behead you all. I really wanted to cut off your heads in the street here today, because of the way you have treated these slaves, with arrogance and coercion, and evil and tyranny, and in ways that Allah has forbidden." His words hang in the air, heavy with emotion. Then comes the climax. Ali ibn Muhammad, the former slave, now the leader of rebels against the system that made him a slave, calls for a whip. He hands it to another rebel, who steps forward. The rebel raises the whip, then brings it down on al-Halili, lashing him across the back. The crowd gasps. Al-Halili screams in pain and surprise. Ali ibn Muhammad watches impassively. Hundreds of lashes follow. With each stroke, the power dynamics shift further. Ali ibn Muhammad's rebellion gains momentum. In that moment, the narrative shifts from oppression to empowerment, from humiliation to retribution. The marketplace becomes a theater of historical change. The event is a turning point, marking a shift in the power structure between the oppressors and the oppressed. It's a public display of defiance, reminding viewers of the horrors of slavery and the strength it takes to resist it. The image of the former slave standing over his former master, delivering justice, is a powerful one. It speaks to the resilience of the human spirit and the universal desire for justice. And indeed, such revolts were rare. But like embers, they burned with a fierce intensity, reminding us that even in the darkest times, the spark of rebellion can ignite. The story of Ali ibn Muhammad and his confrontation with al-Halili isn't just a tale of individual courage. It's a microcosm of the struggles faced by enslaved people under the Abbasid Caliphate. It also reveals the systemic nature of the oppression they endured. The confrontation takes place in a marketplace, a setting that typically symbolizes commerce and exchange, but under the Caliphate, it's also a place where enslaved people are bought and sold like commodities. This duality underscores the brutality of the system. What makes this story more impactful is the historical context. The Abbasid Caliphate, despite its reputation for cultural achievements, was complicit in the perpetuation of slavery. Enslaved people were denied basic rights and were subjected to appalling treatment. The story resonates with countless similar experiences throughout history, reminding us of the universality of the struggle for human rights and dignity. Though the story ends with the public humiliation of a single slave master, it's important to remember that the Abbasid Caliphate's endorsement of slavery was deeply ingrained. Confronting such a powerful institution required collective action. And indeed, there were moments in history when enslaved people under the Abbasid Caliphate and elsewhere rose up against their oppressors. The Zanj Rebellion, which Ali ibn Muhammad played a pivotal role in, was a significant uprising against the Caliphate's rule. It was a rebellion not just against slavery, but against a system that perpetuated inequality and oppression. Though ultimately crushed, the rebellion serves as a testament to the enduring spirit of those who fought for freedom. However, this story also reminds us of the limits of individual acts of defiance. While confronting a slave master like al-Halili might have brought momentary satisfaction, true change could only come through dismantling the entire system of slavery. The story also touches upon the complexities of power and oppression. Ali ibn Muhammad's act of revenge is understandable, given the brutal realities of slavery. Yet it also reflects the cyclical nature of violence. Revenge often begets more revenge, perpetuating a cycle of pain and retribution. It makes us question whether true liberation can ever be achieved through acts of retribution within a deeply flawed system. It is also a story of hope. It shows that even in the darkest times, the spirit of resistance burns brightly. The image of a former slave delivering justice to his, Oppressor is a powerful reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the unquenchable thirst for freedom. While stories like these might seem like isolated incidents, they are emblematic of a larger struggle. They are threads in the vast tapestry of history, each telling a story of immense suffering, courage, and the relentless pursuit of justice. To understand these stories is to confront uncomfortable truths about our shared history, to acknowledge the brutalities that have shaped our world. By doing so, we honor the countless individuals whose voices have been silenced by oppression and ensure that their stories continue to be told. Their narratives serve as powerful reminders of the importance of empathy, understanding, and the need for continued progress towards a more just and equitable society. Other smaller rebellions flickered through history as well. Whenever cruelty crossed too many lines, groups of slaves slipped their bonds at night, gathered handfuls of desperate men and women, and whispered of a life where they were free. They found only short-lived freedom. The caliphal armies were too strong, but their courage echoed down the corridors of time. A quiet defiance whispered on the wind. In the heart of Baghdad, where the caliph held court, a rumor spread like wildfire. It spoke of a gathering, a secret assembly of rebels, planning a daring escape from the city of gold. These whispers carried on silk threads through the bustling bazaars, hidden beneath sacks of dates in the dimly lit souk. No one knew who started the rumors, but everyone listened intently. Was it a figment of the imagination, or a glimpse of hope in a sea of despair? The legend tells of a hidden door in the city walls, a passage known only to a few. Through this covert entrance, the conspirators planned to slip out of Baghdad, seeking refuge in the distant mountains. There, under the cloak of anonymity, they hoped to build a life free from the shackles of slavery. Their plan was audacious, bordering on the impossible. But desperation breeds boldness, and these enslaved people had nothing left to lose. Their numbers were shrouded in secrecy, perhaps a dozen, maybe more. United by their shared trauma and longing for freedom, they banded together in the dead of night, their meetings clandestine and fleeting. Among them was a young woman named Layla. Her skin was the color of midnight, her eyes reflecting the pain of 1,000 stories. Layla remembered a time before slavery, a childhood filled with laughter and warmth. But those memories were now faded photographs in the dusty album of her past. Layla's story is one of resilience and quiet strength. She had endured the caliph's cruelty, witnessing the horrors inflicted upon her people. But she refused to be broken. In the darkest hours, she clung to the belief in a better tomorrow, a sliver of hope that kept her going. Their nocturnal gatherings were tense affairs, punctuated by the rustle of robes and hushed whispers. They spoke in codes, their words carefully chosen to avoid detection. Theirs was a dangerous game, one misstep away from capture and the swift retribution of the caliph. Each member carried the weight of their collective dream on their shoulders, moving like phantoms through the labyrinthine streets of Baghdad. Yet they were betrayed. The caliph's spies were everywhere, their ears attuned to the slightest whisper of discontent. The net tightened around the conspirators, leaving them trapped in a city that had once glimmered with promise. One by one, they were captured, their dreams of freedom shattered on the cold stones of the palace dungeons. Layla watched in horror as her companions were dragged away, their faces etched with fear and resignation. Hope, once their guiding star, flickered and died in the suffocating darkness. The caliph's punishment was swift and merciless, a warning to any who dared to dream of rebellion. The conspirators were paraded through the streets, their bodies bearing the marks of torture, their spirits broken. Layla, spared for now, saw the broken remnants of her community and felt the full weight of their shattered dreams pressing down on her. As the dust settled and the echoes of their screams faded, Layla was left with the haunting realization that their sacrifice had not been in vain. Their silent rebellion would become a whisper in the winds of change, carrying tales of courage and defiance across the desolate landscapes of history. Even in defeat, their spirits resonated, urging future generations to keep fighting for freedom. And so the story of the clandestine plotters in Baghdad became a legend, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who dared to dream of a better world. Their faces may have been erased from history's records, but their bravery echoed through the ages, inspiring acts of quiet resistance against the oppressive forces that sought to keep them subjugated. In the grand tapestry of history, few threads are as dark and durable as those that bind us to the dawn of reckoning. We've journeyed through empires, navigated the intricate dance of politics and faith, and now we stand at the edge of understanding. With the passing of centuries, the brutality of these practices gradually faded, but not quickly. In fact, legal slavery in some Muslim lands lingered well into the modern era. Saudi Arabia and Yemen did not fully abolish slavery until the 1960s. Our journey reminds us how deeply these chains were woven into history. And here we are at the close of it, standing on the threshold of a new day. Behind us lie the echoes of the past, the whispers of forgotten voices. Before us stretches the promise of understanding. As the night recedes, one question lingers in the stillness. What do we do with this knowledge now? How do we carry forward the stories of the past without letting them eclipse our present or future? Tonight, as the last embers of our journey fade, let's reflect on this. As the first rays of dawn touch the horizon, let's remember that each great caliphate, in its grandeur, cast long shadows. We've marveled at the magnificence of Samarra, Baghdad, and Cordoba, cities that shimmered with the gold of learning and trade. Yet in the markets and palaces of these very cities, the toiling hands of the enslaved went often unrecognized. Their silent contributions like the water that fed the gardens of paradise, essential but unseen. The very splendor that we've admired was built, in part, on their backs. Tonight, let's honor not just the empires of old, but also the countless individuals whose stories have been buried by the sands of time. Let's remember the mothers who sang lullabies to their children in the dead of night, the scholars whose minds burned bright despite the shackles on their wrists, and the dreamers who dared to hope for a world where the call to prayer echoed in the halls of freedom. As the darkness deepens, we've sat in the shadow of great mosques, the silent witnesses to centuries. These houses of worship, once filled with the rhythmic cadence of prayers, now stand as poignant reminders of a bygone era. Within their arches and domes, the echoes of countless voices resonate. Each step we take seems to awaken another whisper of history. And tonight, let's listen to those whispers. Let the stories of the enslaved, the stories of the forgotten, rise above the hushed tones of the past. The journey across the deserts and cities has been long, and we've sought solace in the poetry that has echoed through the ages. Verses that spoke of longing, loss, and the unyielding human spirit have resonated deep within us. Tonight, let the poetry of the Bedouins and the verses from the Quran guide our thoughts. In the verses of the past, we find solace and strength. They remind us that even in the darkest of times, hope flickered like a flame, and the yearning for freedom never truly faded. Now, as the moon climbs high in the star-studded sky, we come upon stories of resilience and rebellion, tales of courage in the face of adversity, of defiance against the chains of oppression, of dreams that dared to soar beyond the confines of captivity. These stories are more than narratives. They're testimonies to the indomitable human spirit. Throughout our journey, we've walked among the ruins, not just of cities and empires, but of lives interrupted, of dreams deferred, of stories silenced. The crumbling walls around us tell tales of a people's perseverance and their resistance against those who sought to diminish their humanity. And tonight, let's give voice to the voiceless. As the night deepens, let's breathe life into the stories of ordinary men and women who in extraordinary ways sought to reclaim their dignity, their freedom, their very essence. We remember the whispers of dissent, the acts of defiance, the quiet acts of rebellion that kept the flame of hope alive. The wind seems to carry their stories tonight, rustling through the ruins, weaving them into the fabric of our remembrance. And we, the inheritors of their legacy, must ensure that these stories are not lost to the winds of time. But amidst the ruins and whispers, we find glimmers of hope, tales of redemption, of second chances, of lives rebuilt and legacies forged. These stories are threads of light in the tapestry of our journey, reminding us that even in the face of profound adversity, the human spirit can endure, adapt, and triumph. From the bustling marketplaces to the serene gardens, we've encountered stories of love, of family bonds that defied the odds, of friendships that offered solace, and of faith that provided strength. Love stories, whispered across generations, have echoed through the ages. And tonight, let's celebrate that enduring power of love. Let's recall the tales of romance that bloomed in the most unexpected corners of history, reminding us that even in the darkest of times, the human heart yearns for connection, affection, and the warmth of companionship. The sands of time have witnessed the ebb and flow of civilizations, the rise and fall of empires, the triumphs and tragedies of countless lives. Beneath the vast expanse of the night sky, we contemplate the legacy of those who came before us. They lived, loved, dreamed, and endured in a world vastly different from our own. Some found fame and fortune, leaving their names etched in the annals of history. Others toiled in obscurity, their contributions often overlooked, but no less vital. And many more simply yearned for a better tomorrow, a world where the chains of oppression would one day be replaced by the chains of equality and brotherhood. As the night deepens, we turn our thoughts to the scholars, the thinkers, and the visionaries of the past. In the hallowed halls of wisdom, they sought to unlock the mysteries of the universe, to understand the complexities of the human condition, and to chart the course of human progress. Their thirst for knowledge was insatiable, their curiosity boundless. And though they walked this earth centuries ago, their ideas, their innovations, and their contributions to the storehouse of human understanding continue to shape our world today. Their works have inspired generations, challenged the status quo, and illuminated the path towards enlightenment. And as we stand on the shoulders of these giants, we are reminded of the transformative power of knowledge, the enduring legacy of those who dared to ask questions, to explore the unknown, and to seek truth in a world often shrouded in darkness. They lived and died in a time when the boundaries of human understanding were being pushed to the limits, when the known world was expanding and the mysteries of the cosmos beckoned. Their insatiable curiosity, their relentless pursuit of answers, and their willingness to challenge conventional wisdom laid the groundwork for the scientific, intellectual, and cultural advancements that we continue to benefit from today. Among them were astronomers who gazed up at the stars and unlocked the secrets of the celestial sphere, mathematicians who delved into the depths of numbers and shapes, and physicists who sought to unravel the very laws that govern our existence. Their findings, often revolutionary and groundbreaking, challenged long-held beliefs, expanded our perception of the universe, and paved the way for future generations to reach even greater heights of discovery. And yet, as we celebrate their achievements and marvel at their contributions, we must also acknowledge the challenges they faced. For in their relentless pursuit of knowledge, they often encountered skepticism, resistance, and even persecution. They dared to question long-held beliefs, to challenge the status quo, and to venture into realms where the boundaries of human understanding were yet to be defined. But their courage in the face of adversity, their determination to uncover the truth, and their unwavering commitment to the pursuit of knowledge serve as an inspiration to us all. For it is through their dedication and sacrifice that we are able to stand today and marvel at the wonders of human discovery. It is because of their contributions that we can gaze up at the stars with wonder, explore the depths of the oceans with awe, and delve into the intricacies of the human body with fascination. Their legacy lives on in the countless minds that have been ignited with a passion for learning, in the endless quest for knowledge that drives us forward, and in the spirit of inquiry that sets us apart as human beings. As the desert wind whispers through the ruins and the stars twinkle above us, let us remember the scholars of the past, the architects of our modern world. Their stories may be lost to the sands of time, their faces obscured by the passage of centuries. But their contributions, their struggles, and their triumphs remain etched in the very fabric of human progress. We are the inheritors of their legacy, the beneficiaries of their hard work, and the torchbearers of their dreams. And as we look to the future, let us carry their stories with us, for they are a testament to the power of human curiosity, the resilience of the human spirit, and the transformative power of knowledge.